this trio took the world by storm.
This movie is unlike anything that I have worked on.
K-pop Demon Hunters is one of the most talked about films of the year, topping the music charts and becoming Netflix's most watched animated film ever. But how do you mix idols, demon slaying, and real emotion without it falling apart?
And I remember just writing it and just texting each other, being like, dude, this is good. Like, I'm feeling something.
At the heart of the movie is Maggie Kang, a Korean-Canadian artist who began as storyboarder on films like Lego Ninjago and Minions, eventually rising to the director's chair at Sony Pictures Animation.
So everything needs to have meaning because time is so limited in animation.
Her creative partner is Appelhans, a visual development artist behind Coraline, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and the director of Wish Dragon.
You'd watch it and you'd want to be interested by it, but it was like, God, this is not what this movie needs right now.
Today, we're asking the questions that fans and storytellers care about. How do you sell the rules in the first 15 minutes without an origin story? Why does the couch scene matter? How did Golden secretly became kind of about the trio's origin? And yes, of course, I asked about the sequels.
Because we could go on forever. Trust me, there's so much lore.
So grab your headphones, light stick, and sword, and be sure to stick around to the end to discover what Maggie and Chris have revealed about the future of K-pop Demon Hunters. Let's go! Maggie and Chris, I am so excited about this interview. I have never been so excited because it's my 7th watch of the film. I love it so much, and I couldn't be happier about having those great songs stuck in my head. It's really one of the occasions where you don't get tired of that. I would love to start with a question we got from Stefan, who was asking about the dynamic and character development of the trio. What's your advice on creating a character and a set of characters that and their dynamic? What is your approach?
The main character is always your most difficult one. They're usually very burdened, and in our story, Rumi has a very dark thing that is her burden. One of the challenges with any main character, really, especially with Rumi, because her backstory is pretty dark, it was really hard to kind of find pockets of fun for her. And so the couch scene, it was one that we added in pretty late because we're about to really learn Rumi's story about her having this pattern and that she's hiding her shame. And before we got to that, we just wanted to carve out a moment where it was like she's joyful and she's a fun person to be around. And she has this like fun, silly, quirky side of her. That was kind of something that we kept an eye on for Rumi. And even in the dates, there's little quirky moments, the way she reacts to the note when she first gets it from Jinu, little acting bits that we put in just to kind of keep her fun character alive.
So they're so no, they're
The final result, it's so amazingly tight. You weren't afraid to dig deeper into what thematically is a flaw for each of them.
We thought about the other two as like, how's everybody's voice pretty different? And for Mira, we always had the kind of Diaz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who's, very kind of monotone, a little deeper voice, or like Parks and Rec, Aubrey Plaza character. But we wanted to always like subvert the obvious in our movie. So they do it in those shows too, where that character she's the most emotional, she's the most insightful, she's very deep, she's very perceptive.
Look, I'm kind of a difficult person. Overly blunt, short-fused, highly aggressive.
And so we wanted to kind of balance off Rumi with somebody who was a little bit harder on the outside. And Zoe, we just wanted kind of lightning in a bottle, very bright, busy, but also deep when she needs to be.
But with the two of you, they mean something. I mean something.
We get a lot of comparisons to Powerpuff Girls, and I think when you have 3 characters, you kind of dissect it that way. These 3 kind of like archetypes.
That's my girls!
We just tried our best to create differences in them that were different from other trios, but it is actually, we take it as a compliment that people compare them to famous trios.
By the way, if you're new here, I'm Pietro, an Italian writer-producer. On this channel, we help you become a better storyteller and succeed in the animation industry with the creators behind the films you love. The writing of the film is particularly interesting to me. It's so tight, it's so amazingly crafted. There's nothing that is too much. At the same time, you have a lot of characters, you have musical numbers, lyrics in the songs that need to advance the story. I want to learn a little bit about your process as two directors who contributed to the script itself, your relationship to the writer, and how do you approach, if you had to give some advice to a new writer?
For animation, you're just kind of working the script and working the dialogue and the writing to the very end. Chris and I wrote from the very beginning all the way up to the last delivery, crafting every line, every word, because time is so limited in animation, so everything needs to have meaning. So we worked with the writers, Hannah McMeechan and Dania Jimenez. We wrote that first draft together. Chris and I are like not labeled as writing partners technically, but we were writing partners throughout the whole process. We would always have like 3 to 5 scenes that were like, okay, these are the next things going into production. These have to get ready by an X amount of time. And we kind of categorized them and prioritized. We would split the work. So he would take half the scenes and I would take the other half. And we would do our first initial pass. We swap, do a pass over it. If we needed to meet and talk about big changes, that we would do that. So it was that kind of a process for us.
Genius.
A lot of the writing, we do it in the edit bay. That's where you see the movie get created and see the movie up. And when things are cut together, there's pacing issues and things that you see with the edit. And so we come up with a lot of new ideas, but also like new lines in the edit bay. That was kind of our process. And because of that, it's actually kind of my favorite part of the process, because you're kind of forced to think really quickly and make changes. And you could make those changes really quickly. We just run to the other bay, record a line of scratch, and that gets processed and dropped in. So you kind of build this thing like almost live, like in that session. So it's really exciting for me.
What would you say was the main challenge, story-wise, something that maybe wasn't clicking or was particularly challenging for you?
I think from the start, Maggie had a really clear sense that she didn't want this to be an origin story movie where you watch these young girls as trainees and see all of their early days and the forming. She wanted to meet them in their prime and have it be a story about something that's unfolding, maybe when they feel like they're at the peak of their career already. As soon as she said that, I was like, that's really interesting. That's kind of what I would rather see than training. And we actually boarded a lot of that, I guess you could call it like origin story stuff. And the movie just kept kind of rejecting it. Like we'd cut it in, as Maggie said, in editorial. You'd watch it and you'd want to be interested by it, but it was like, God, this is not what this movie needs right now. And so what we ended up with on a writing level that was really tricky was in the first 15 minutes of the movie, we needed to not only establish original fantasy rules, which are pretty weird. Like people use music to fight demons. Like we had to get the audience to buy in on that. We had to introduce these characters in a way that whatever their backstory is, it's entertaining and interesting enough that you want to spend the movie with them. Basically, like I want to be around these 3 girls for 90 minutes. Also, and this was the last piece to click, we did need to know something about their origins. And that was something that there were multiple screenings and the audiences kept wanting to know a little bit more about the girls so that they could empathize with them and connect to them. And so it was right at the end when we figured out that the golden song could be not just a plot point, like the next song the girls need to sing, but basically a biography of like a little zero to hero story, which meant that you could just get enough of a story of Mira and how she felt before when she was kind of a black sheep and an outsider, and Zoe and Rumi, all of them had their kind of vulnerable sides. So to be able to wrap that up in this pop song and get it across 15 minutes into the movie when you really do need to buy into them emotionally, I feel like I was hoping that would work, but I was totally not sure if it would.
Oh yeah, that was a total Hail Mary.
Yeah, I'm so proud of it and it seems really smart. Like, yeah, and then we planned, and I'm like, we kind of planned it, but we kind of just like tried to solve it at the last minute because we knew we needed it.
I see it as a masterclass in opening scenes, and it's really amazing. I know that maybe to you it's like a lot of trial and error, but the final result, it's so amazingly tight. You weren't afraid to dig deeper into what thematically is a flaw for each of them. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you approach character growth, both the internal and the external growth that the characters had?
One of the reasons we didn't want to do an origin story is because for Rumi, we wanted her shame to be a lived shame. So something that she had been carrying for a very long time. Like Chris was saying, like tell the origins of that in a non-origin way. So we had to rely a lot on flashbacks, which I don't think a lot of filmmakers are like excited about, but it was kind of necessary for this type of story. We relied on visuals too, of like seeing her patterns kind of not be as prominent when she was younger, and then just seeing the growth of it. There's very subtle ways that we feel like we've kind of tracked that story, and you always have this like fear that it doesn't get picked up, you know, people don't notice it, but it's amazing to see the audience actually see it and appreciate it and understand it. So that was a really challenging thing to kind of craft. And then with Mira and Zoe, just kind of sprinkling all that information in there. With Jinu too, it's like just slowly getting to know a character and his backstory, like bit by bit, you know, through these kind of memory flashbacks that this character has. You know, that was really fun to do. And, you know, we've seen that before, but I think when people are kind of invested in this character, and we're also kind of Rumi, we're kind of falling for this guy at the same time as our main character is. And then hopefully like that betrayal and that truth of his story really hits us as the viewer just as hard as it hits her, because we're so invested in him.
I left them! That's right.
That was the way that we kind of treated it, is like Rumi is on this kind of setting up her story and her kind of payoff, but then bringing the surprise element of this boy character and following her journey through him and our experience like through her. So that was really fun. This movie is unlike anything that I have worked on, where the story has been kind of crafted so much through the years, and it really hasn't changed. And even the scenes haven't changed since the very first draft. And there are certain scenes that we had to kind of add in just to kind of bridge things together. But like the core story just never changed. Everything was like dialing. And the first few versions had too much of Jinu, and it was too much of that story. And so we had to like balance it off with the girls, and then it became a little too much of the girls. We had to just turn dials on everything. So it was very like kind of precise what we had to do. And on top of that, you have to think about pacing and you have to think about the actual story and the plots landing. So it's really tough.
It's very uncommon. Usually you hear, you know, the original story was completely different. We really stick to the characters, but the plot was. Do you attribute that to maybe your dynamic working together? Because the idea was super strong from the beginning. What do you think was the main ingredient?
Great original idea. I remember Maggie and I working on kind of punching up the first draft that we ever turned in the studio, probably 3-4 years ago. And as we were slogging through Act 2 and stuck on some stuff, and we just didn't have answers in some places, but we got to like the ending. And I remember just writing it and sending the FDX back and forth and just texting each other, being like, dude, this is good. Like, I'm feeling something. To me, that's the test of a story, is how it ends. Does it all add up to something? I think early on, the sort of beginning and the end, in a weird way, felt like they really had great potential and were kind of clicking, even just in the vague way that things click in a first draft. Then it became really just the arduous thing of like all those details of ironing out all the connective tissue. Credit to Maggie too. She has a strong opinion, but she also is 100% the best idea wins kind of person. There's no ego or pride in like, well, I thought of it this way, but then the writer or the board artist thought of it. Neither of us cared. We're like, oh, that's better than our idea. We're using that. Here it goes. Off we go. And I think that's important to maximize when you have a big team and a lot of smart people. You need to be able to absorb their good ideas. Just for screenwriting listeners, the art of dramatic writing, which is the famous Lagos Igri book. It's so boring, you guys. It's so hard to read. You fall asleep every chapter. But it's genius. Everything's in there. And I think Maggie and I did really hard work to map the stages of Rumi's journey so that each scene, let's say the fan sighting scene, it might feel like it's just a comedy scene, but there's actually an exchange with her and Jinu in that scene about hatred is never going to beat Kima.
If hate could defeat Kima, I would have done it a long time ago.
One of those steps, like he teaches in his books, to map the progression of a character so their change feels earned. And I felt like that heavy lifting really helped us to make sure that the characters were advancing, even if we were doing really fun and fantastic and more glamorous stuff on the surface. There was always something else going on.
Before we keep going, I wanted to invite you to the Write for Animation Academy. It's a creative community where animation writers come together to share feedback, swap ideas, and push each other to the next level. We host daily writing sessions to help you stay consistent, weekly feedback sessions to improve your work, and monthly masterclasses to deepen your knowledge. Whether you're just starting out or already pitching your show, when you join, you get instant access to our short film writing course. This is a step-by-step program that will guide you through writing your own short film script in just 4 weeks. Join us today at writeforanimation.com/academy. The link is down below, and I cannot wait to meet you in our next session. Now, it's time to hear what Maggie and Chris have to say about what a K-pop Demon Hunters sequel could look like. We put out a brief video asking for questions. This is the #1 question, and I know you can only tell so much, but everybody's asking, what about the sequels or prequels? We want to know everything. We want more of this. I know you can tell much, but I imagine you explored some story ideas that you had to let go. What's something you would enjoy and be thrilled to explore more that maybe you didn't have time in 90 minutes?
Oh gosh, like Chris was saying, we boarded a lot of the origins of how the girls came together. How did they act in front of each other when they first met each other? And Rumi's backstory, I think there's a leak. There's a version of it out there that one of our story artists boarded and is kind of out there in the world. So I know that a lot of people have seen that. There's a lot. There's obviously a lot of story, and there's also this misconception that there's a director's cut or something, that like we made the movie 3 hours long and then trimmed it down. Like that never happens in anime. It's hard enough just to make this one cut. That's a lot of work. So this, we don't put in work where we don't need it. Yeah, there's a lot of like unanswered questions and unexplored and unexplained things. And I think our audience is used to long form storytelling. We have so many series that feature like individual stories, but like Chris was saying, like ultimately, even a really fleshed out backstory of Mira and Zoe, they weren't completely necessary to track Rumi's story. And so we had to make the decision to pull those out. Even the story of what her parents went through, that ultimately doesn't really matter either, is how we decided, because even if it was a case where the two parents were in love and they created her, it doesn't take away her shame, which are the patterns. It doesn't mean that she can be open to her hunter friends about it. It doesn't change that fact. So it did feel unnecessary, for it to be existing in this movie, but there's a lot that can exist.
I think kind of what Maggie said, which is it took a long time to figure out what pieces of this big story fit into one chunk to make a good story that's theatrical story. And so I think we're probably wary to commit to different avenues because there are so many, but for us it'd be our own journey as storytellers to figure out if there's a chapter 2, what are the most compelling and relevant, because we could go on forever. Trust me, there's so much lore. And so I think, at the end of the day, it's kind of it's a journey that we want to figure out too.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been amazing, and I think I'll keep watching it at home with my daughters many times, and we'll share it as a great script to analyze and learn from. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Great questions.
Thank you so much,
Thanks, Pietro.
Thank you. If there's anyone in the animation industry who knows how to build visually stunning worlds with hearts and great storytelling, it's Chris Sanders. Check out this video where he shares why How to Train Your Dragon had to be completely rewritten, his thoughts on live-action remakes, and the problem of AI and the future of animation. I'm Pietro, this is Write for Animation, and I'll see you there.